Good afternoon. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Russell Geist with Construction Specialties. With me today is Jeffrey Blake. We're going to go over installation of louvers today with you. And before we get into that, we wanted to do some general knowledge kind of discussion about louvers as a whole. First off, you're going to see in front of you this louver here that's got a couple different conditions of it. This is a horizontal blade louver. There's vertical blade louvers, and there's also what we call combination, where it's two louvers together. Sometimes it's a horizontal in the front with a vertical in the rear, or just two horizontals or two verticals. But the idea is it's two louvers together for specific performance. Before we get going into it, I want to talk about some clip angles and how louvers are typically installed into an opening. With horizontal louvers, primarily, you're going to have clip angles at the jambs, which are these components here and here. And then you're also going to have clip angles if you've got mullions or a splice. We're going to start off with mullions first, and then we'll show you what a splice looks like. So if we take a look at this, I'm going to turn the louver around for you. This position, this right here, you'll notice, if we tilt it back to you, there's nothing behind the louver here, behind this mullion. So this is what we would call a standard mullion. Then we move up to a reinforced mullion, which would have anywhere from like a small 3-inch channel to a bigger 5 or 6-inch channel. And then beyond that, we start going to double channels or maybe even a tube condition behind it. What the difference between all three of these is what we need to add to the mullion to get it to span the louver opening heights and the louver section widths. So that's why we'll always have different combinations of these. And they'll be different across all the louvers on a specific job, depending on the overall size of that. So like I said, we've got clip angles for the jam conditions. So typically when you install a louver, you're always going to do most of the work from the interior side of the building. So you're accessing the back of the louver. Typically, the normal orientation for a clip angle is in this orientation. So you would fasten the clip angle into your substrate, and then you'd attach it to the back of the mullion, or the back of the louver jam. The other condition you can do is a reverse clip angle installation. I'm going to tilt that forward again so you can kind of see what that looks like here. So what that does is when you've got conditions where, like on concrete, you need to hit a certain edge distance for your fastener, that if you had it back like this, you couldn't meet those conditions, so you need to flip it under. That's something that's going to get worked out during the shop drawings, because sometimes we may actually have to shrink the width of the louver to allow you to have that clip angle turned under like this in that reverse orientation. Additionally, when you've got those clip angles at the jambs, when you go to mullions, you're going to typically have a lot bigger clip angle, maybe something like this. This, for argument's sake, is a 4x4 angle. And what you'll do here is you're going to mount the clip angle top and bottom of the mullion here and here, and fasten into both mullion halves themselves. If you've got a single channel reinforced mullion here, you're going to typically have just a clip angle kind of in this position over here. Again, let me show you what that looks like here. If we tilt it forward, it's just going to go there. A couple fasteners up into the substrate, and then a couple into the back of the louver, actually into the channel itself. Lastly, when you go to double reinforced channels, this is where, for the most part, you're going to end up with two clip angles. They're going to go inside of these angles here, and then obviously they'll go a lot farther down, and we just happen to have a fastener in the way right now that's causing an issue, but that'll be sorted out before louvers get on site, so you won't have that issue. The angles will also probably be a little narrower than this right here compared to the size of the channels. But same thing, you would mount those into that space, fasten up into the substrate, and then bolt the two together through the channel themselves. What else? There is other instances similar to when I was talking about on the jams where you have a reverse installation like this, you could have the same thing on a mullion condition, where behind here, instead of the angle being like that, you're gonna have the angle like that. And again, that's when you need to hit certain edge distances primarily is the reason why you're flipping that clip angle under. You can do the same thing for this condition and this condition. It's just a lot more fancier and clip angles that we'll design for you for those conditions. Sill pans, that's another thing we want to talk about. On typically what will, for most part, all louvers other than like a non-drainable, the louvers from 30, 40 years ago, those are the ones that don't typically have a sill pan, but for the most part, your drainables, and especially anything with a wind-driven rain rating, in CS world, a storm resistant or an RS louver, those are all gonna have sill pans. It's actually mandatory to have it. We will not supply the louvers without them. So what'll happen is you before you install the sill pan, you're gonna run a bead of sealant or 2 lines of it along the bottom of the opening, and then you're gonna smush the sill pan into that sealant to get a good adhesion underneath the sill pan itself. Sometimes you may even wanna consider running a bead of silicone along the top edge of the sill pan here where it meets that transition to the wall of the opening. So just in case water gets through the louver through the side of it, that the water doesn't get down back alongside the sill pan, you want that water to come back into the sill pan. There's other louver models that the drainage of the water through the louver actually goes through some of the frames, like the sill of the louver. This is the sill of the louver here, but it would come through in a way and in large amounts, and it'll go into the sill pan here and flush out to the outside of the building. If you didn't have a sill pan on those kind of louvers, you're gonna have a lot of water coming into the building. So sill pans are always recommended or mandatory for most of the louvers. All right, so we just finished talking about visible mullions and reinforced mullions. Now I want to talk to you about splices, like this condition right here. Some people say it's a splice, an arc splice, hidden mullion. What it does is it allows a more continuous, uninterrupted look of the louver blades across an elevation. So you'll end up having this splice in lieu of a mullion. It's where 2 shop assembled louver sections come together. That's what we're doing here. It's not gonna be at the middle of the louver section, so it's gonna be at the joint of 2 sections coming together. So similar to mullions, this splice is gonna have a whole variety of different means of reinforcing it for different heights, widths, wind load combinations. What we'll end up doing is we'll start with a single channel. We'll grow it to 8, 9, 10 inches deep. If it needs to go bigger than that, then we go to doubles, just like we showed you on the mullions. Similarly with the mullions, when we have this connection here, this condition, we're gonna have clip angles on either side of it that are gonna get mounted to the opening up through the clip angles into the substrate, and then we're just gonna bolt it together into the channel and an angle. Now if you see here, we do have an angle. We'll use that in lieu of a channel on the shorter ones and smaller sizes. These 2 conditions here are at the middle of a span of a blade. So typically, a louver blade can only span so far from end to end under certain wind loads. And when we exceed that, we need to reinforce the middle of the blade with something else. So typically it's gonna be a channel. There are conditions where it may end up being changed to a tube. But same thing here, when you have that, we're gonna end up just throwing a clip angle right on the side of it. I believe we start off usually on this side of the channel, not the inside of it. It's just easier to get access to it. If that wind load, height, width combination gets to a certain point, and especially with the fastener going into the substrate, if we need to have more fasteners that we can't fit onto a single clip, that's when we're gonna go to a double clip design. Again, like we talked about on the mullions, You can do reverse clip installations. So imagine it would be a clip angle like this, but this surface right here would extend over the louver or under the louver on the bottom and give you that ability to drive your fastener closer to the center of your substrate so you can meet any kind of edge distance requirements.
All right, so the last item I want to quickly discuss is an exterior installation. And by that, I mean it's a louver that is installed exclusively from the outside of the building because you have no access from the inside. We need to coordinate this during the shop drawing review because once louvers are in the field, it'll be too late. It's very difficult to accomplish this without any coordination ahead of time because majority of the time with these kinds of installations, we actually need to decrease the size of the louver in height and or width in order to accommodate this type of an installation. Now in this example, you can see the louver jamb in that second detail is about 2 inches away from the side of the louver opening, when normally this is only about a half an inch. So we've downsized the louver from the width of the opening by about 3 inches or 1.5 inches on either side. We shop attach an aluminum plate to the back of the jambs, and the installer will drive screws through this plate and into the pre-installed clip angle. Once this is done, a cover trim angle is then attached to the face of the jambs to decrease that 2-inch gap back down to a more typical half-inch gap. The last thing is you just install the backer bar and seal the louver into the opening like you would any other type. So this is just one example of an exterior installation, and for the most part, it is relatively easy because it's a single louver section. Once you start trying to do an exterior installation on a multi-section louver, it can become very complicated or in some cases just not possible. So again, if the project requires an exterior installation, best case for success is to bring this up while CS is developing the shop drawings. Thank you.